you start with data governance efforts and tie that to a particular use case that has a tangible value. Computer vision is one area where I actually saw a good success in my previous job in manufacturing, because in manufacturing, vision is a very big signal for making decisions, right?
As they say that if everything is important, nothing is important, right? So you have to know where to build the momentum within the organization so that they start seeing the value of using these systems. Welcome to Tech Bytes with Ash, where we discuss trends in digital technology that support true business outcomes. I'm Ashu Bhatia, a consultant, an author, and a practitioner of all practical insights on your technology investments. Well, hello there, and welcome back to my channel, Tech Bytes with Ash. Today, I'm so excited to talk to Amit, who is the Chief AI Officer. This is a company that does a lot of source-to-pay cash flow assessment for varied industries and sits on a ton of data. Amit, a seasoned AI leader with almost 2 decades of experience in high-performance data science teams and deploying AI where it truly delivers results, not just prototyping, not just pilots. From fintech to manufacturing to healthcare, Amit has done a lot of transformation across industries using some of these tools and bringing the teams together for measurable value. With his background in engineering and an MBA from Cornell, I think he brings both those duality of technology and strategic visioning to really bring results. Well, let's dive right in. Hey, Amit, good morning to you, and very excited to have you on my podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thanks, Ashu. I'm very excited to be here. I know you for a while now, so very excited to be with you on this podcast.
And coming from your kind of background, doing so many things in your 20 years of just work experience, right? From retail to manufacturing to healthcare to consulting. I mean, you've been really broad and deep in so many areas. I'm so excited to start jumping into some of the topics that we want to cover to help the audience. But before any time that I start, I like to really get that the audience get to know the professional, the human being behind the professional, right? I would love to just understand your journey, how you've come to this position, what kind of, morphed and formed you today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, excited. So I grew up in India and did my engineering as my undergrad. And right after that, I took my first job in supply chain forecasting. Okay, which was a little bit of a uncommon thing at that point. And I took it because I really liked statistics at that point. I used to enjoy the central limit theorem and the whole stats part that came with it. So I took my job and I really loved the ability to forecast future using statistics. So I started working for a Fortune 50 company doing supply chain forecasting. And that's where I really found my passion for data, to be able to predict future and then to be able to make decisions based on the numbers, right? Those were the three things I really loved. And that kind of like almost was the impetus for my future career. So one thing led to another. I thought I would use the ability to apply numbers, in a larger sense. So went to business school and really learned to focus on more quantitative business classes. And that really helped me to widen my perspective on things. So right after MBA, I got into a consulting company, and that's where I started finding the marriage between the data-driven analytics and business decisions. And they started kind of like applying data towards solving real business problems across wide variety of domains. So I had clients in pharmaceutical, in retail, CPG. So worked across diverse set of clients, and really found that this is what I want to do in my career. So moved on from consulting. I joined a digital marketing company, and that's where we started building that time machine learning based products for digital marketing. That was one area where data was widely available, generally of good quality, and you can really build meaningful machine learning models that time. So did that for a while, then worked in healthcare after that. And the same idea is to take data and apply towards meaningful decisions. So what we started doing is, and I'll talk about one use case that I really I feel very proud about being part of, where I used to work for this company where people would make calls to this IVR service where to understand somebody's eligibility for Medicare, right? And in the past, what used to happen is these calls were largely done based on the age and kind of like demographics of the person. But with that, the hit rate for the understanding about somebody's eligibility was quite low, somewhere in the 4%. And what we did is we actually took a lot of the claims data that we got about these people, and using that information, we were able to actually build a machine learning model that improved the hit rate from 4% to 80%. And that was a big jump. And that's where I think I really saw the importance of applying machine learning to big data. And the data was quite large. We're talking about like 60, 70 million people in that case. And then healthcare data. So that was kind of like my work in the healthcare, was part of a transaction that sold that company to a private equity. And then I moved on to work in manufacturing. My claim to fame there was I was the first person hired to build this team grounds up. And at the height of it, we had about 25 people in 6 different countries and doing AI-based use cases in manufacturing. And AI in manufacturing is a very interesting domain, partly because you're applying AI in the physical world, and that had its own challenges. But through sustainable efforts, we were able to actually create value, and that value was very meaningful for the business. And since then, I moved to PRGX, and currently I'm a chief AI officer here. And I was hired to build the AI capability for this company, which is in the source to pay domain.
Right. Excellent.
So that's a bit about me. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great journey, Amit, because as you just said, I think it's that curiosity and the willingness to play with numbers, to kind of base your decisions, as you said, on real data rather than just this gut feel. Because I think that's where the whole industry is going. As you gave us some examples of just a myriad of industries, frankly, it's the fluency with data and AI and the comfort is what people are seeking. And I think you just mentioned that you have definitely both, if you will, the Venn diagram. So you're in the center, right? You've got technology background, you've got the business background, and a lot of people these days are talking about, okay, what skills are needed? They're putting a third circle saying, yes, software engineering, yes, data science, but the business domain, somewhere in the middle of that is where economic value is to be realized. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of that. So let's just jump right in to where you are today. As you mentioned that PRGX is into source to pay analytics. So you must be dealing again with a lot of data, a lot of decisions based on data. Talk to us a little bit about what kind of volumes of data, how big is the things that you're creating? Because I know that this business is all about helping clients to recover some of the cash flow, find some patterns over and above how the systems are already built.
Yeah, so PRGX is a 50-year-old company that has been in the source to pay space. And as you said, we try to recover money for our clients through finding leakages in the entire source to pay process. So as you can imagine, the data volumes are quite big. Our company basically ingests about a petabyte of data every year.
Wow.
So that's a large amount of data. And we curate that data and then make use of that data for AI. So since I started, I'm trying to build teams that focus on specific areas within source to pay. So we have a team that focuses on the contract side of the work. So we do a lot of contract compliance audits. And this is where people manually read contracts, find inefficiencies in the contracts, and compare that against the accounts payable data, right? And that's where you see that there are a bunch of gaps. We're trying to build processes that can automate this work. And as a result, our plan is to scale quite quickly to this work. And the advantage that we are hoping to provide to our business and to clients is this higher accuracy and then faster ability to recover for our clients. So then I have the US-based team that's focusing on the contract business. I have a team in UK that's focusing on our profit recovery for or retail business. So we have a pretty large retail business, and we take data across various sources such as purchase orders, point of sales, invoices, and through mixing and matching, we find recovery opportunities for clients, because you see that there are a lot of gaps that could happen because of the disparate systems, disparate personnel. So we do that, and that's where we are applying AI to find those opportunities quickly and more efficiently. And then I have a team in India that's focusing on our largely what we call document AI, which is to ingest large amount of documents that we get through emails and be able to parse that out and provide that output to our auditors for improving the audit process. So that's kind of like what we are focusing on. And our early results are quite positive. We are seeing real value through application of AI, and more specifically generative AI.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Again, these days, I think like you and I know, when we walk into any kind of boardroom, you don't walk away from the discussion of data, AI, and then now Gen AI, right? So I'm glad that you guys are trying to use the potential of all those technologies. And I would imagine that all the industries that you mentioned, and specifically your current firm, doing things for maybe some industries that are hit by margins, so very thin margins. So anything that you can find is like a treasure map of AI, right?
Yes.
When you're creating some of these solutions or these kind of products, we know that we deal with data to do always looking at the back, looking like hindsight. But then the key is looking at foresight and knowing what the future would be, right? Whether you predict it. So in these cases where you mentioned compliance or even audit, yes, you want to kind of get those patterns historically, maybe now in real time. And then are clients looking to use this technology to even predict? I would be curious to see that.
Yeah, I think I feel that the world in general, not just the source to pay industry, is moving towards more predictive from retrospective, right? For a long time, the industry was focused on looking at data backwards. So was it through dashboards, business intelligence solutions, and so on? People would try to understand the pulse of the business,
Right.
looking backwards, right? But as people say, you cannot drive a car looking in the mirror, back mirror all the time. You have to look front, right? And that's the potential AI provides, right? So maybe through solutions such as forecasting, which is where I started my career using. In the past, we used to use a lot of statistical methods to forecast based on the data, the demand or the supply shortages and stuff like that. Now we are using far better technology, using machine learning and then now artificial intelligence, right? So that's one area I think which is moving from retrospective to prospective. We also are focusing in terms of like computer vision is one area where I actually saw a good success in my previous job in manufacturing, because in manufacturing, vision is a very big signal for making decisions, right? And if I can see further along, and if I can see, it could be for safety reasons, it could be for improving the quality of things. If I can see better, if I can see further, that basically has clear implications for business value. So we applied computer vision for improving quality of our work, for reducing the wastage that happens, and also for improving safety. We built several systems that are actually implemented right now in our plants in my previous company that basically understand the safety hazards before they occur. And that has a real implication on human life. So I'm very proud about the work that we did there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, I think, as you mentioned, some of those use cases that are sprinkled over, whether it's manufacturing or retail, that sometimes you make an impact, not only in the numbers, but into human life, which is phenomenal, that you can get to see that impact in touching so many human lives. So you mentioned an analogy of, not looking at the rear view mirror when you're driving a car, you need to look front. That reminds me of another analogy. And I want to kind of jump into that. With all this data that you're talking about, I feel that data quality would be a big issue, integration and data quality, but it's kind of like they say, right? When you're driving even an expensive car, bad gas means bad drive, right? So what is your experience on just how do you, when you have such volumes and volumes of data all across different industries, how do you make sure that the data wrangling piece is also kept in discipline, right? Because we all know garbage in, garbage out. So I'm just curious from your vantage point, how have you managed that, whether the current firm or previously?
Yeah, and I would say that's one area where I have some very tangible learnings from my past, and I actually changed my approach over a period of time. So, in the early part of my career, I focused on data governance as a siloed effort, right? As an effort that was we created these large teams that focused on improving data quality, data governance, and what I learned quickly is as time went on, there was no business adoption of that because I could not show the value of that effort early on, and we're kind of like trying to just call it boiling the ocean at that point. We are trying to go too wide. Since then, I have changed my stance, and that has been very effective for last 7 to 8 years. Is where I focus on a use case centric data governance. Okay, this is a term that I have coined, and I kind of like live by it. And the idea is you start with data governance efforts and tie that to a particular use case that has a tangible value, right? So the use case has gone through your vetting process of value, effort, scalability, the kind of dimensions that you apply to weight use cases. But then you basically build data governance around it. So I imagine them as two concentric circles, right? The inner one being your use case, and the outer one being data quality and data governance. And what happens is then you basically start delivering the value through use case, and then basically business starts adopting the governance requirements to get that value over a period of time. Now you take the next use case, and then you think about what additional governance efforts you need to put in around that. And what starts happening is your two circles starts expanding, and you basically see a much wider impact of your governance effort. And I saw a real value from that. So I'm of the belief that data governance is very important, and every business should adopt it. But if you tie that to a business value, to a use case, that actually gets a much better adoption and much better traction.
That's great. That's great. I think the audience would love those pearls of wisdom because, as you said, when data governance is generally discussed in organizations, typically it's considered initially a little bit of an overhead unless there's been a crazy breach or something. But if you try to boil the ocean, you can't show the ROI. You get very, very overwhelmed with the efforts that you're kind of executing on. I think this thing around, as you said, kind of being very use case centric data governance. So you take the use case, look at what the data is needed, and you grow from there. But then in that, I would just to kind of go deeper in that, I would think that you want to prioritize your use cases because I know I've talked to so many chief analytics officers across being on this side of the consulting table is that they tell me that a lot of the businesses come to them for so many use cases these days, right? So, I come from a lot of financial services background. So people who are in lending or banking or just insurance products, everyone is coming with so many different use cases. It's just tough to keep up with all of that, no matter how good your demand governance, process is. So from your vantage point, and this is a great thing, like the circles expand and it'll make your whole data regime healthy. But do you focus a lot in prioritizing these use cases? Otherwise, business is screaming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one thing I would say if anything has helped me in my career is that the early focus on prioritization and putting the right attention to that prioritization. That's the one of the most important aspects of my job. And we typically use a framework that I have basically kind of like built over a period of time, right, where we focus on the clear understanding of the value, right? Typically, you don't have a good understanding of the value early on. So you probably make certain assumptions, make an estimate. So I tend to be kind of like plus or minus 200 deviations from my mean. I'm okay with that range early on. And my plan is to then reduce that variability over a period of time as I start getting more information, right? So value is one aspect that I focus on. The feasibility is second aspect, right? I mean, people think nowadays that AI can solve every single problem, and that's not true, right? We all know that there are certain limitations. So to understand the feasibility is also very important. And then you look at the effort that you require, and depending on the business, you have the scalability approach. Well, can I scale this when I was in manufacturing, right, one of the advantages we had was, well, if we build, say, a computer vision use case, right, the ability of scaling that business from one plant to another plant was quite good because a lot of the things were about the same. So that came as a very important dimension in our things, whereas certain use cases were very specific for a given manufacturing plant, right? So we would definitely use that as a dimension. So I built my own framework now to prioritize these use cases, but that's the most important part is you have to make sure that your prioritization is done correctly. You get the business buy-in on that prioritization, and then you basically build governance around that use case.
And that's great. That's great because because as they say that if everything is important, nothing is important, right? So you have to know where to build the momentum within the organization so that they start seeing the value of using these systems, right? And then you mentioned an example in manufacturing, and I'm curious because I know manufacturing and digital plants and everyone is trying to say, as you mentioned in the beginning, the physical and the digital world are definitely coming together in that realm. And I'll just be curious because, as you said, scalability is the great part there. What you've done in one plant could be easily replicated others. I worked for a global 50, manufacturing company once, where I even saw that depending on the continents, depending even on the locations, the plants had just different investments in technologies.
Oh.
So I don't know if you deal with that because as a chief analytics officer, you definitely need tools as well, right? You need to have some investments in whatever they're using. But if the fabric is very different everywhere, then is that a little bit of a constraint that I don't know if you've had experience in that?
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the, I guess I would say, difficulty in manufacturing in terms of applying AI is in many cases for various historical reasons, different manufacturing plants are built differently, right? The sensors are different, the type of instruments they use are different, right? And that becomes one dimension in your scalability paradigm, right? You want to understand, well, is this particular use case, given the plethora of technologies that exist in different manufacturing plants, is that use case scalable? And if the answer is no, then you choose another one that is more likely to be scalable, where you probably are going to go and invest in something new. So when we build some of the computer visions use cases, we learned that, well, the high-speed cameras were not part of the tech stack in the plants before. And that was something like a new technology that we are going to introduce. And that turned out to be an opportunity to basically standardize on a technology and then scale that across the plants. That's where we saw big traction with the computer vision use cases.
Mm-hmm. And then that's great because, as you said, with being so disparate in their technology investments, you have to first kind of standardize or get everyone at least a little bit on the playing level.
Yeah.
And that's when you can scale some of those enterprise solutions. But I think once you do that, I think, yes, the potential in certain industries is so much more than others, right? So that's a great way. And I think that's where the excitement of AI in general is, to understand that. And there's so much talk in this world right now that will AI just take over all the jobs and the skills? But like someone said, right? Like AI is not here to replace only people. It's really here to replace guesswork. You're trying, as you said in the beginning, trying to use data to make more informed decisions is where this is. So however you use AI or data to get your fluency is where you will benefit. And that's where I think the whole industry is kind of going towards. But with that thought, let me ask, what are the biggest trends that you're seeing with your vantage point of working with so many industries? I mean, yes, you mentioned Gen AI. There's so much happening in AI, Gen AI, etc. Where do you see all this going in the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, but that's an honest answer, to be honest. Because things are changing so fast. But that being said, I can tell you what I'm seeing right now. What we are seeing as something as emerging trends. The first one, I think this is no surprise to anyone, is the agentic AI, right? I think that's really becoming very a big value driver in the industry, and this is where you have AI systems that can take actions based on the output that they find, right? So in the past, if you think about ChatGPT, where they would give you answers and then you have to take actions based on that. And now we are going towards an area where these agents can basically interact and plan and then take actions based on that plan. So that's an area where we are seeing some good outcome at this point. The second trend I would say is the marriage between generative AI and some of the other technologies. So one area where we are seeing actually, at least I'm seeing in the industry, good traction is reinforcement learning and generative AI marriage. And that's kind of like where we are seeing a lot of improvements happening where generative AI systems are now, people are trying to make them self-learn on things. And that I think will continue for foreseeable future where reinforcement learning, we started actually, funny enough, I started reinforcement learning in 2015, 2016, tried to see tangible outcomes from that. And it was very hard to apply that in the industry. So it kind of like went down, had its own slumber. But now with this marriage with generative AI, I think it's finding its resurgence. So I think that's one area where I'm finding a lot of positives. And I think I would say the third thing, if I have to really see where I feel we'll see a clear impact, is application of AI for data governance itself, right? For a long time, people thought that, well, humans have to solve the data governance problem and then we can get value from AI. And that's, if you really think that AI systems are capable, they should be able to solve that upfront problem. And I'm seeing a lot of effort is being put into that area, a lot of investment happening in that area where AI is being applied for data governance, data quality improvement, and so on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Because if AI can be used to find some of the issues with the data, right? The nulls, the not completeness, or whatever those dimensions are, then you actually use the technology to make itself better, right? Like, as you said, self-healing technology to kind of help you do things. And that's where this is so exciting, because every day we wake up in the morning, there's some new development in this. As you said, no one can really predict the future with so much happening, so many investments. But I think that, to your point, the key would be kind of use it in some use cases that are very specific so that you can grow the kernel and actually show impact to the business. And that's where I think the rubber meets the road. The lasting thoughts, any advice for the users, for my audience, just to kind of look at any books, any websites, or anything that you follow to keep up with so much happening in your world?
Yeah, I'll give you three different things. I actually read McKinsey Digital quite often. I think it's definitely one publishing I would recommend. A lot of good information there. I also follow a YouTube channel by a guy named Matthew Berman. He's one of the kind of like, I would say, he tries to keep with the technology and provides the outcomes very, in a very tangible fashion. So I would recommend that. And the third thing is I've written a newsletter called Unwind AI, and that basically gives me a lot of information pretty quickly.
Very good. No, I'll definitely share that. Any information you want to share for the audience where they can connect with you or your work, LinkedIn, or any contact information that would you like to share?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Amit Dingare, and I tend to write about my understanding about various things, where we are seeing value. So I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so I recommend your audience to connect me with me there.
Absolutely. I'll share your handle and definitely let the audience kind of connect with you and learn more. So thank you so much.